I did watch the Academy Awards and I watched the Oscars, so I'm going to read this part because I don't want to miss anybody. I want to do it right. To Dr. Wright and Dean Kostelnik and the rest of the McAuliffe Committee for their vision in creating this award and for their continued work in honoring the legacy of Christa McAuliffe. To Amy Shane, my superintendent, for nominating me and for her efforts to make our school system in O'Neill the great place to work and learn that I know that it is. To Jeannie Crumley, for her friendship and support. She's always been there for advice and encouragement, and her reassurances on so many occasions have kept me strong in fighting a good fight. My principals, Steve Brose, Diana Shimmick, and my students, Robert Peter, Angel Rodriguez, and Sergio Luzania, who wrote letters on my behalf. Most of all, I want to thank my family who have done so much to bring me here this day. To my mother and father-in-law, Rod and Rosemary Densmore, my sister Valerie, and my brother Bill, who are here with me today. To my mom Trish, who repeated to me so many times the life's greatest piece of advice that I've ever received, which is you'll catch far more flies with honey than you ever will with vinegar, and that helps me daily in working with kids, and I thank her every day for teaching me that. To my dad, Paul Corcola, and my stepmother Sharon, who taught me about courage and leadership. These are qualities born not out of words, they are brandished above all else through actions. Many will speak of the problems that we face, few will rise to meet those challenges through deeds. My children, Annie, Molly, and Jared, they're a daily reminder to me of my life's work to leave this world a better place than I found it. And finally, to my wife, Becky, I will forever be in awe of you. When I read through the attributes that this honor seeks to recognize, I couldn't help but think to myself I ranked below in our own family, and it's largely because of you. You're an amazing human being, and I thank God every day for the blessing that is you. You're a brilliant educator, wonderful mother, and my wife, and I still can't believe you said yes. I've thought a lot about this moment right now, what I was going to say to all of you as aspiring educators. This isn't bad for a guy that was, I'm a 35-year-old one-time college dropout, so, you know, I've come a long way since that point, and I've learned a lot along the way. In 8 years, there's lots of lessons that come, and I could probably talk for an hour, but I wouldn't do that to you. It was funny, my father-in-law said, you know, what are you going to say? You worked out a speech and that kind of thing, or somebody said that, and my father-in-law looked at him and said, well, he's probably just going to stand up there and think of something that, you know, really hits him, and he'll go on for hours with that. And that's generally how I operate. You just put a quarter in me, and it's pretty tough. But I've learned a lot of things over the 8 years that I've been a teacher at O'Neill Public Schools. One thing that I've learned is that you're going to get advice everywhere. Some of it's good, some of it's bad, and you know, advice is different for different people. I mean, it works well for some, and others it doesn't. One thing that I've realized is that if you had a school full of educators that would have the same personality as myself or operated the same way I did, that wouldn't be a very functional school. I know my role in my school. I try to do it well, but I also know my limitations. And so for some of you, you know, these are pieces of advice that work for me. If you have the same kind of personality that I do and that kind of thing, they might work for you as well. But, you know, believe in who you are and what you're capable of doing. Understand what your gifts are, and then use those gifts to the betterment of students, and you'll never go wrong in that regard. One thing that's really worked well for me is, first of all, don't sweat the small stuff. Okay, and what I define as small stuff is things with acronyms attached to them. Okay, that's how I define them in education. And I can see my superintendent getting a little uneasy at this. In this day and age, there's a lot of things with acronyms attached to them in the field of education, and it's a high-stakes game anymore. Where, you know, test scores matter, and those kinds of things. And you certainly need to do your due diligence to make sure that your kids are doing well. But trust in the fact that if you're giving it your all, trust in the fact that you know, if you connect with those kids and you challenge them to get over the bar, that they'll do that, and those things will take care of themselves. So I would encourage you to do that. Have high standards. You know, a lot of people, we have a lot of fun in my classes. We really do, and I think, you know, it's the first impression of a lot of people is, how can you learn anything when you're having that much fun? And my response to that, of course, is you don't learn anything unless you're having fun in the process. At least that's the way I look at it. You know, challenge your kids. Don't dummy down the curriculum. I mean, and maintain high standards, but also make sure that regardless of your kids, I teach science, and I know that not every student in my classroom is going to be an aspiring molecular biologist, or they're going to, you know, launch shuttles to the moon. They have all sorts of different gifts, and understand that they're in your classroom for a reason, and they shouldn't walk in the door and feel like this is a place where they can fail. They should walk in the door daily and recognize this is a place where they can succeed. So find ways for all of your kids to succeed on a daily basis. Connect with them one-on-one and help them know that what you're teaching them is relevant, and that they can do it, and it'll serve you well. I use this one. Bo Pelini says this a lot, and it resonates for me not only as a coach but as a teacher. We're at a day and age that it strikes me as tragic. The amount of time people spend, you know, pointing out the problems that we have, and certainly we need to do that. We need to recognize that we have problems that we face in education and society in general. But what I notice completely absent from that is a lot of finger pointing. And my words of advice for you is, in everything that you do, get away from the finger pointing and point the thumb. Don't point the finger, point the thumb. And recognize that, you know, the successes and failures of your kids are your successes and your failures. And that in any situation that you see your kids, you know, not making the grade or doing those things, ask yourself, what can you do to make a difference? The rest of the world will tell you it's their parents' fault. The other teachers will tell you it's their parents' fault. It's a failure of the system. It's all of those kinds of things. I'll tell you that it's your failure. Take it, own it, and do something about it. Because it leads to great things. Because those kids that are failing will someday, they will be successful. And there is no greater feeling in the world than seeing, you know, your kids that you were involved with, you know, live their dreams. There's no greater feeling whatsoever. Resist that temptation. I wish I could stand here in front of you today and tell you that all the kids that come into my classroom, they go on to do great things. Unfortunately, I have kids just like everywhere that, you know, have dropped out and you know, fallen through the cracks and those kinds of things. Resist the temptation to write those kids off. Try to stay in contact with them one way or another. You know, I see in Missouri right now they have a law going to pass that says that they don't want teachers to connect with students through Facebook. I think that's idiocy. I just, you know, when those kids go on, you know, certainly it's not my job to go out there and solicit friendships with a bunch of kids, but if they come looking for me, I think there's a reason beyond that, and try to stay in touch with them in one way or another, because you never know when the light's going to come on, when they're going to realize that they need to come back, and always be there for them in that moment when it arrives. I want to share a story with you, and it has to do with this. You know, I have a student. I've had many students, but I have one particular student, Daniel Dominguez, who's meant so much to me. He's not only a student. I've said on many occasions, you know, people say, well, you know, he looks up to you, Coach. I look up to him more than I can imagine he looks up to me. I mean, what he stands for, where he comes from, and all those kinds of things. I mean, this is a kid that, you know, he wrestled a little bit in junior high, but he was convinced he was going to be the next, well, you guys are all pretty young, or at least but he's going to be the next Spud Webb. I mean, he was this tall, but he was going to be an NBA basketball player. And I just looked at him and said, man, it's not going to happen for you. But anyway, I didn't tell him that. I was just saying that in the back of my mind. He went out for basketball his freshman year. And then, you know, his sophomore, junior, and senior year, he came around and he decided he wanted to try wrestling. Well, he was a state qualifier as a sophomore, and his junior year he was a state champion in Class B, which is just unheard of. I mean, for him to do those kinds of things. And he's a Hispanic kid. He was born in the United States. He's not undocumented. He's a United States citizen, but he recognized the challenges that so many of his classmates had as an undocumented student, and he got involved with some of the work that I was doing on behalf of undocumented kids, and we together came up with the idea to raise awareness for him to take that walk from O'Neill to Lincoln to raise awareness about the plight of undocumented kids. And, you know, I'm not going to lie to you, I probably talked him into it a little bit, but in a way that I wanted it to be his idea, because I realized if you're going to walk 200 miles, you don't do that because somebody else wants you to do it. You do it because you want to do it. And so we did. 40 miles a day. First day wasn't too bad. Day 2 was a little bit challenging. By day 3, he was sitting here saying, what in the heck did I get myself roped into, you know? And as the consummate coach, I'm sitting here saying to myself, and this is my final point that I want to make to you, is that your greatest job as an educator is to inspire your kids. That's your #1 job, is to find what it is that they're passionate about and make them believe that they can do it. And then on a daily basis, remind them that every step they take going forward is either a step toward that goal or a step away. There's no life in between. And if you can get them to buy into that, they'll have success. And so, you know, Daniel's on his journey, and he's hurting. I mean, this is not an easy task. 40 miles a day. I challenge anybody to try it. Actually, I wouldn't, but he did it. And by day 3, he was hurting. And I thought to myself, there's a song, and it's mainstream. It's a rap song. I can't even believe that I like it. But anyway, it's by T-Pain, and it's called All the Above. And I get it, and every time I hear it, I think of him and all that he comes from, and all that he is, and all that he does, and it reminds me so much of him. And so anyway, on this one particular stop, we're taking this break, and he gets in the car, and I've got this all planned. It's all subtle, but this is going to come on the iPod so that he can listen to it. And he's in the back seat, and I think we had a little conversation about it beforehand. And so he's listening to the song and whatever, and he's been around me enough that he kind of knows how my wheels turn a little bit. And so he realizes this isn't random, that the song is on the radio, and he says, "Coach," he says, "you like this song?" I'm like, "Yeah, I like this song, Dan." He says, "Does it inspire you?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "Well, why don't you get your ass out here and walk the next time you want this?" So, I guess the moral of that story is that I would like you to realize that not everything you're going to try is going to work. But you do it for a reason, and he has meant the world to me. He made it to Lincoln. We had a rally on the steps of the Capitol, and it was a great event. And I stand before you a little bit with a heavy heart, realizing that I'm being honored, in a large part for a lot of work that really hasn't generated any sort of relief for those kids. And it breaks my heart on a daily basis. I go to bed on a nightly basis, and I continue to think about the struggles, the trials and tribulations of these kids who have so much to offer the world. And I would do anything to change their situation. And but I'm reminded of a quote that Senator Diana Shimmick said that day when we were standing on the steps of the Capitol, and I have it listed prominently in my room and several other places, and it reminds me to keep going. And it's from famed anthropologist Margaret Mead, and it says this, and I'll leave you with this. This will be my final thought here. "Never doubt that a small group of people, thoughtful, committed citizens, can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has." I want to thank you. Good luck to you.